So happy Thai New Year and Sri Lankan New Year. Welcome to Bodhicitta Dakini Monastery. So today's talk is on letting go, which is a really vast topic. Yeah. And when I say letting go, I'm not speaking in the sense of specifically about grief or, I'm speaking more about just the inevitable changes and trauma and, the cuts and bruises of life, the injustices and the trauma and the end of relationships we didn't want to end, getting sick, all of these on a broad scale, the things that happen to us that are hard to let go of. I'm speaking in a broad sense. And so when something truly life-changing happens, something we envisioned was taken from us, it can be really hard to let go. And it's also really important to know, like, when to hold on and when to let go. Like when you have a child, when you have an older person you're caring for who is your responsibility, when you have a friend who is going through some difficulty, when you have injured wildlife you're caring for, when you have a misbehaving dog, those are not the time to let go. They are the time to, be there for that person or that animal. And even ourselves, like we go through things and we need to learn to hold fast for ourselves, hold space for our own feelings. So there is a time to let go. It's like that thing in the Bible. It says that for everything there is a season. There is a time for everything under heaven. Yeah. So a time to plant and a time to harvest and a time to let go. I'm paraphrasing very badly, but you get the idea. There's a season for everything. So, and when we say let go, we don't mean disassociate, like cut off from feeling, deny your pain, deny injustice, deny what's going on. We don't mean avoid difficulty, or be dishonest with yourself. We just mean first understand, but don't fixate. Don't cling, because clinging to something that is gone, something that you very much wanted, that is no longer serving you, it's a bit like being dragged behind a truck. Like you get gravel rash. Holding on to something that is no longer there is painful, because it is it just isn't that way anymore, and it's hard to accept. And when I say I'm not talking specifically about grief, the reason is because grief has its own timeline, and no one should tell a grieving person let go. Because if you were with someone many years, or you had a marriage for many years, or you had a child that you lost or something, it's natural and good to feel the loss of that love, because that pain is a reminder that you had love, and that love continues living inside of you. And I heard Thich Nhat Hanh speak about grief in a really beautiful way. He said, when the now your loved one is part of the elements, is part of the universe, because nothing is lost, only transformed. And they go back into the elements. So when you feel a breeze on your face, that is your loved one smiling to you, reminding you to return to the present moment. When you plant a garden, you remember your loved one who has gone back to the earth, who has gone back to the elements. Or they've become the air, they've become the fire, they've become the water. So they're still there in you, and you carry the memory of their love. So a grief is a reminder that you had something special that is worth mourning. But there does come a time in a grief timeline, when it is maybe after a year or two, when fixating on that will become toxic and not useful. But I would never say to someone, when it's a very recent thing, I would never say let go, because they've had an experience that is very deep and life-changing, and that grief and loss has its own timeline, and no one can tell them when to stop mourning. They know their own mourning timeline. So the letting go I'm talking about here is more about a broader sense of letting go. Letting go of our self-clinging, letting go of mind states, negative mind states, letting go of difficult things that happen to us that we tend to fixate on. You hear in spiritual circles letting go, but it can sometimes be like someone actually spiritually bypassing or just asking you to speak to not address something that needs to be addressed. So people can weaponize spirituality, like you just need to let go. Like, for example, women or men who've been sexually abused in a spiritual community, or rich people who don't want to hear about the troubles of poor people. Like, don't you think you're a little bit attached? I think you need to just let go, And it's like, actually, that's weaponizing spiritual teachings for the person with more privilege to not have to face an uncomfortable thing. And that is a misuse of the idea of non-attachment. Like when you do something terrible and your friend or your partner says, I'm really hurt from that, and that wasn't right. It would be really inappropriate for a man who's just cheated on his wife to say, you need to practice letting go. Because feelings need to be dealt with, and actions have accountability. But what we're talking about here is, letting go of mind states and things that no longer serve us, letting go of too much fixation and concretization of the way you think, of, things that happened in the past that stop you from moving forward and thriving. So letting go is related to concepts around acceptance, forgiveness, self-compassion, psychological flexibility, and gratitude. And, there's a lot of research that shows that people who have greater mental flexibility, the ability to accept new information and adapt, have better mental health. But, none of us should feel ashamed for the struggles we have, because sometimes we have to first understand something and feel it and comprehend it. And it can take a while for something to settle with us. If you're in a state of shock, it can take us months or years to understand what has happened and the impact it has had on us. But unfortunately, it's a hard thing, but it's also a good thing to understand that things are impermanent. And even this body, this life that we love, will eventually, like, it's changing. I'm almost 50, I need to go to the eye. I need glasses. Like I look into the distance and it's a bit blurry, and it's like, oh my God, I'm old. Like I'm expecting them to give me a certificate going, oh, you're old now. And, it's just natural that the body gets older, and we have to accept these things with grace, and if we do accept these things, we actually, if I'm going to die and I don't know when, we live our life more fully, whereas if we're always holding on to the past and fearful of making change, fearful of adapting, then we'll get to old age and we'll realize, wow, there's a whole bunch of things I wanted to do, but I never did because I was too afraid, So, there is a direct correlation between the ability to loosen our fixation and general well-being. So this is also, in meditation, we can see our mental fixation to thoughts. I am, and what do they think about this? Like we see our crazy mind, and in meditation, we learn to step back and realize I have thoughts and feelings, but I am not those thoughts and feelings. I have a choice about what I engage with. It's like, have you ever been to those restaurants where it's like a sushi train and there's like all kinds of things going past, and you're like, okay, I can choose which one I pick up. I don't have to pick them all up. So likewise, our mind and our heart, lots of things are coming and going, good, bad, you know, wholesome things, unwholesome things. We can choose what we engage with. Yeah. So, yeah. And also, this relates to to the very deeper root of why we exist in the world of birth and death, which is our misapprehension of the nature of the self. You know, in Buddhism, we say there is no permanent, unchanging self. There is only a relative mind-body continuum. And we don't use the word soul, we use the word mind stream, because soul implies something solid, eternal. Whereas mind stream implies like a river that is constantly changing. Like there is continuity. You can remember when you were 5 years old, but you're not the same person. You've changed and you will continue to change, even though there is continuity conditioned by karma. The river Ganga is not the same at the glacier, the source, than it is when it goes through Varanasi and all the pollution and dead bodies, and when it finally reaches the ocean. There is continuity. It has the name Ganga, but it is in a constant state of change. And likewise, you can never put your foot in the same river twice, because the water that it flowed yesterday has already changed. Likewise, our mind, our mind has many mind moments, but it's in a constant state of change.